The impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago.
Hmm.
Now, I have to be honest with you. When I opened up the briefing material for today's deep dive and saw that as the opening line, I did a double take.
I bet you did.
I thought I'd opened the wrong file. I was thinking, did I accidentally download a sermon? Or maybe, a history of the Bronze Age?
It definitely sets a tone, doesn't it? It's not your standard top 5 tips for B2B sales kind of intro.
Not even close. But what's so fascinating is once you get past that biblical flair, the source, and we're talking about this really sharp essay called Netison by Brett Calhoun, is actually talking about something incredibly grounded.
Mm-hmm.
It's talking about maybe the single biggest shift in the economic landscape of our lifetimes, the shift from scarcity to abundance.
And we're not talking about loaves and fishes here, are we? We're talking about talent. We're talking about opportunity. We're talking about capital.
Exactly. The old world, the one most of us grew up in, was defined by scarcity because it was defined by geography. I mean, if you wanted to build the next big thing, the next Google, you had to be in a very, very specific zip code.
Right. You had to be in 94107 or somewhere very close by.
And if you weren't there, you were, for all intents and purposes, nowhere. But the whole argument we're going to unpack today is that the scripture of geography has been totally rewritten.
That's the core of it, really. The central argument is that the promised land isn't a place on a map anymore. It's become a mindset, a distributed network.
So today, we are going deep, and I mean really deep, into this whole idea, the decentralization of Silicon Valley. We are going to tear apart that old narrative of San Francisco, look at why it's dying, and then we are going to build the new reality from the ground up.
We're talking about the art of remote work, but not just as a perk or a nice to have.
No.
We're talking about it as a competitive weapon, as infrastructure.
And we're going to get tactical. This isn't just theory. We're going to discuss how you actually build these global async native teams that can, frankly, run circles around the old, slow, centralized models.
But before we get to the how, we have to really understand the what and the why. We have to dig into the old story. Because, for a very long time, San Francisco wasn't just a city.
No, it was the city. It was the center of the universe for this stuff.
It was the Rome of the tech world. All roads led there.
So let's just set the scene for a minute, because the source material paints this picture so vividly. I want you, our listener, to just visualize this old narrative with us. You picture the fog rolling over the Golden Gate Bridge, that classic shot. You're in a coffee shop in Soma, south of Market, and the air smells like, what, roasted beans and desperation?
Money. Don't forget the smell of money, or at least the hope of money.
Right. The source describes venture capital flowing like Pacific tides. The whole idea was that the very atmosphere was just charged with potential. You could sit down with your laptop, and the person to your left is, coding the back end of the next Uber.
And the person to your right is a partner at Sequoia Capital who's looking for a place to put $5 million before lunch.
That was the myth. And it was a powerful one.
It's a romantic image, for sure. And, we have to give it credit for about 30 or 40 years, it wasn't just a myth, it was the economic reality. The rule was brutal but simple. Geography was the gatekeeper. You had to be physically present to get access to the network, to the capital, to the talent.
So if you're a genius developer in Ohio or Lisbon or Lagos, it didn't really matter. You were outside the city walls.
Exactly. You were invisible.
Yeah.
But the pivot point of today's entire discussion is that this story is dead. It's over. And Calhoun's central thesis is that San Francisco has undergone this transmutation. It's been unbundled.
It's no longer a set of coordinates on a map. It's a distributed operating system.
And a protocol.
SF is everywhere. That's the mission statement for this deep dive. We need to figure out what that actually means. If SF is everywhere, does that mean I can, build a unicorn from my basement in Idaho?
Yes. And the argument goes even further. Not only can you, but you might actually have a significant advantage over the person trying to do it from a tiny, overpriced studio apartment in the Mission District.
Okay, that is a bold claim. Advantage is a very strong word. I think a lot of people listening would still argue, yeah, but the magic is in the room, the serendipity, the chance encounters.
And that's the myth we need to deconstruct.
Let's do it. Let's move into part one, the unbundling of San Francisco. First, let's establish the baseline. Why did it have that monopoly in the first place? It wasn't just the nice weather because, frankly, the weather in SF is unpredictable at best.
It was a perfect storm, really. A series of compounding advantages that created a flywheel effect.
Think about what you need to build a massive tech company. First and foremost, You need raw brain power. The talent pipeline.
The pipeline. And you had Stanford and Berkeley right there just churning out thousands of brilliant, hungry, and frankly, relatively cheap engineers every single year.
So you had the raw material.
You had the raw material. Second, you had the old guard. You had these dense clusters of people who had already built things, repeat founders, early employees from Oracle, Intel, Apple. If you were stuck on a database scaling problem, you could literally walk down the street and buy coffee for the person who solved that exact problem at Oracle in 1995.
That institutional knowledge was just in the water supply.
It was. And then, of course, the fuel for the whole fire, the money.
The VCs on Sand Hill Road.
Planer Perkins, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia Capital, they were all there a few miles from each other. And this created that mythological serendipity the source talks about, the idea that these chance encounters drove the entire economy, that bumping into someone could change your life.
But here's where the history lesson gets really interesting. The expert commentary in our source material, it makes a comparison to other monopolies in history. And the point is, monopolies don't stay on top forever.
No, they don't. And they usually don't just explode in a single moment. They decay. They erode over time.
What's the analogy they use?
Think about Detroit in the 1950s. It was the Silicon Valley of manufacturing. It had the talent, the capital, the supply chains, the infrastructure. It seemed completely untouchable.
The center of the automotive universe.
But the world caught up. Manufacturing techniques were democratized. New hubs emerged in Japan, in Germany. The monopoly didn't fail overnight. It just decayed as the rest of the world leveled up.
And the source makes a really critical distinction about when this decay started for SF. I think the common sort of lazy narrative is just COVID changed everything.
That's the simple story, but it's not the whole story. COVID was the accelerant, absolutely. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire that was already burning. It forced the issue on a global scale.
But the fire was already there.
The fire was already smoldering. The shift towards the democratization of startup building, as the source calls it, started years before 2020. The technology was already in place. COVID just forced all the holdouts and the skeptics to finally admit that it worked.
Okay, so the technology, which we'll get into in detail, loosened the grip. But there's also a huge push factor. We have to talk about the pain, the opportunity cost of geography.
The price of admission. And it got very, very high.
Calhoun talks about the price of the zip code. And he's not just talking about $7 coffees, is he?
No, he's talking about something much more dangerous to a startup. He's talking about the burn rate fallacy.
Okay, unpack that.
It's something I see founders get wrong constantly. They go out and they raise a seed round, let's say it's $1 million. To a first-time founder, that sounds like an infinite amount of money.
It sounds like you've made it. It's a fortune.
Right. But then you have to move your 3-person team to San Francisco. You rent a 2-bedroom apartment for them to live in, which is, what, $6 or $7 grand a month. You get a small office space, another 10 grand a month. You try to pay market rate salaries just to stay competitive for talent.
And suddenly that $1 million is just vanishing.
It evaporates. You're torching your runway, your company's lifeblood, not on product development, not on marketing, but on landlords. You are literally funding your landlord's retirement instead of your own company's growth.
You're paying for the privilege of being there before you've even built anything of value.
Exactly. And the source argues, quite persuasively, I think, that this is a tragedy of resource allocation. Why would you give your investors money to a real estate company when you could be giving it to your product, to your customers?
There's another cost he mentions I found really fascinating, kind of counterintuitive. He calls it the echo chamber risk. Because usually we think of the density of SF as a good thing, right? Smart people rubbing shoulders with other smart people. But he argues it can actually make you dumber, or at least narrower in your thinking.
It narrows your peripheral vision dramatically. If everyone you talk to for coffee, for lunch, at meetups, reads the same newsletters, worries about the same Twitter drama, and chases the same hype cycles.
Like the latest AI trend or crypto fad?
Precisely. You start to lose touch with reality outside of that bubble. You start building products for other people in San Francisco, not for the billions of people in the rest of the world who have completely different problems.
So you get groupthink as a service.
That's a great way to put it. You lose cognitive diversity. You lose the advantage that comes from being disconnected from the hive mind and actually seeing a problem with fresh eyes.
Okay, so the monopoly is decaying because of cost and conformity. But the other side of the coin is that the tools finally caught up. This is what the source calls the modern startup stack.
The great equalizer.
Right. And I want to be specific here because I don't want this to just sound like a list of apps. We all know what Zoom is. But the argument is that these tools didn't just facilitate remote work, they fundamentally unbundled this city.
Think of it this way. What did the physical city of San Francisco actually provide a startup? It provided a mechanism for communication. You'd meet in a conference room.
Right.
It provided a sense of presence. You could see your team working. It provided a repository of knowledge. You had file cabinets and whiteboards with diagrams on them.
Okay. And now?
Now, Slack is the hallway conversation. Zoom is the conference room. GitHub is the whiteboard and the file cabinet and the version history all rolled into one. Notion is the collective corporate brain. Figma is the collaborative design studio.
So each core function of the physical office has been replaced by a superior digital equivalent?
Superior in many ways.
Yeah.
Because these tools have taken the physical attributes of a city and turned them into SaaS products that are accessible from anywhere.
And crucially, they are democratized.
That's the key. The kid in Mumbai has access to the exact same version of GitHub as the principal engineer at Google. The playing field for tooling has been completely leveled in a way that is historically unprecedented.
So, to sum up part one, San Francisco no longer owns the tools of production. It no longer has a monopoly on hustle or on ambition. Those qualities have been unbundled and exported to the cloud.
Which brings us to the new mantra of this era and the title of our part two. Ambition beats address.
Ambition beats address. I love that phrase. It's so powerful. It suggests that your internal drive, your vision, it matters infinitely more than your external coordinates.
It's about what's in your head, not what's on your passport.
So I want to walk through a very specific archetype that the source uses to illustrate this, because I think a lot of our listeners will recognize this pattern or maybe even see themselves in it. Let's create a character. Let's call her Maria. Maria is a founder.
Okay, where's Maria?
Maria is in Lisbon. She's sitting in a beautiful cafe, probably eating a pastelinata, looking out at the water. She has an idea for a new AI SaaS platform for, say, legal compliance.
Okay, so let's run the scenario in the old world. Let's say it's 2010. Maria is in trouble. She has a brilliant idea, but she needs a world-class natural language processing engineer.
Yeah.
In 2010 Lisbon, that person might not exist. Or if they do, they're working for a big bank and they're not interested in her little startup.
So Maria's stuck. Her idea dies on the vine because of her geography.
Her ambition is blocked by her address.
But this is the age of abundance. So what does Maria do today?
She goes to the digital town square. She writes a clear, compelling post about her vision. She posts her concept on Hacker News or on LinkedIn, maybe in a specialized AI community on Discord. She puts the bad signal out to the entire world.
And because the signal is global, the response she gets back is global.
Right. She doesn't get resumes from down the street in Lisbon. She gets a direct message from an incredible engineer in Eastern Europe, let's say Ukraine or Poland, where the math and engineering education is just phenomenal.
Okay.
She gets a portfolio from a UI/UX designer in Southeast Asia who has an incredible aesthetic. She connects with a growth marketer in Brazil who understands how to scale products in emerging markets.
And just like that, Maria isn't a Portuguese startup anymore.
She's a global entity from day one. And this is the critical shift. She hasn't just outsourced a few tasks. She has built a distributed native team from the very beginning.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Is that team really as good as a team of 5 people, all ex-Google, sitting in a room in Palo Alto? I mean, the Palo Alto team can iterate so fast. They can shout at each other across the desk. They can whiteboard an idea in 10 seconds. Can Maria's team really compete with that speed?
The source argues that not only can they compete, they can absolutely dominate. And it comes down to two things: access to talent and leverage of time.
Okay, let's break those down. Let's talk about talent access first.
The math is just simple and brutal. The Palo Alto team is fishing in a pond. A very, very good pond, but a pond nonetheless. They are limited to hiring the top 1% of talent that lives within commuting distance of Palo Alto and is willing to work for them.
Which is a tiny, tiny sliver of the human population.
A minuscule fraction. Maria, she is fishing in the entire ocean. She is looking for the top 1% of talent on planet Earth. Statistically, her team should be, and very likely will be, better.
That just makes logical sense. If you remove the geofence, you dramatically increase the quality of the talent pool you can draw from.
It's the single greatest arbitrage opportunity available to founders today.
Okay, but what about the time aspect, the speed of iteration? The source calls this the 24-hour advantage.
This is the logic of leverage,
Right.
and it's where things get really mind-bending. A centralized team in Palo Alto works roughly 9 to 6 Pacific time. They have 8 or 9 hours in output, and then the office goes dark. The lights go out. Nothing happens for the next 15 hours.
The startup sleeps.
Exactly. But Maria's team, her Ukrainian engineer writes code all day. As he's signing off, the product manager in Toronto is just coming online to review that code and write up the next set of user stories. As the PM signs off, the designer in Bali is waking up, fresh, ready to take those user stories and build the interface for that new code.
It's like a relay race. The baton is constantly being passed around the globe.
It's a continuous cycle of production. The startup never sleeps.
Yeah.
And if you manage that handoff correctly, and we'll get into the specifics of how to do that later, you are effectively getting 3 workdays for every 1 workday that the Palo Alto team gets. You can move 3 times faster.
That is a staggering thought. It completely reframes the benefit. It's not just about saving money on rent. It's about fundamentally compressing time.
It is time arbitrage. You are literally bending the clock to your advantage.
Okay, so this is the new model. Distributed is the default. But this brings up a really interesting question of location strategy. Just because you can hire anywhere, does that mean you should just hire randomly from all over the world?
No, and that's a common mistake.
The source, in part 3, talks about this concept of local leverage and the rise of these new specialized hubs.
This is a really important nuance. SF is everywhere. Doesn't mean every place is the same. It means different places are developing their own unique strengths, their own specializations. The source basically maps out a new geography of innovation.
I love this. Let's look at that map because it's fascinating to see how these new identities are forming.
Okay, let's start in the U.S. Take Austin, Texas. It's not just Silicon Hills anymore. It's developed a very specific blend of software, hard tech, hardware engineering from its Dell and semiconductor roots, and now a booming AI ecosystem. If you're building a physical product with a software component, Austin is a fantastic place to have a node.
What about Miami? I feel like Miami gets a lot of hype, maybe too much hype, but what's the actual substance there?
Miami has positioned itself brilliantly as a bridge. It's the connector between the U.S. capital markets and the burgeoning tech scene in Latin America.
The cultural and linguistic connection.
Exactly. It's also become a haven for fintech and crypto, partly because the regulatory environment there has been very welcoming. The time zone aligns with New York, but the culture is completely distinct.
Okay, let's go international. Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv has been a global powerhouse for decades, but with a very specific focus.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity and defense tech. I mean, if you need world-class security expertise, you go to Israel. That's just a known fact. The pipeline from their military intelligence units into the startup world is unparalleled.
And then you have these massive talent hubs that I think people in the West often still misunderstand. Bangalore, Lagos, Nairobi, Medellin.
And this is where we have to shed the old mindset. These aren't just outsourcing destinations anymore. That's a 20-year-old way of thinking, oh, I'll get cheap labor in Bangalore. No. You go to Bangalore because the depth of engineering talent there is world-class, period. You go to Lagos because the fintech innovation happening in Nigeria is solving real-world problems at a scale the West hasn't even had to think about yet.
They're leapfrogging our legacy system.
Completely. You go to Medellin for design and creative talent. These are centers of excellence, not just cost centers.
The source even mentions these hidden pockets of talent, places you wouldn't expect, like Kansas City, Omaha, or Jaipur in India.
And this is about leveraging quality of life. These are places where the cost of living is low, the quality of life is high, and crucially, the distraction level is 0. If you need a team for deep, focused work, maybe you don't build that node in Miami. Maybe you build it in Omaha.
It's about being intentional with geography, even when geography is optional.
Exactly. You exploit regional strengths while you build for a global market.
And we have some amazing case studies of companies that have done this successfully for years. I think looking at the pioneers helps prove this isn't just some new theory.
Absolutely. Look at a company like Buffer. They were one of the first to really commit to this. Founded in the UK, but they decided from day one to be fully distributed. No office ever. They built a massive social media management platform with a team spread across, I think, 15 different time zones.
And then there's the giant in the room, Canva.
Canva is the ultimate example, born in Sydney, Australia. Traditionally, an Australian startup would hit a certain size, raise a big round, and the VCs would say, okay, great. Time to pack your bags and move the whole company to San Francisco.
It was considered a mandatory step.
A rite of passage. And
Yeah.
Canva just said no. They scaled globally from Sydney. They built one of the most valuable private companies on the planet without ever relocating their headquarters to the Bay Area.
And the analysis in the source is so sharp on this. It says they didn't reject the Bay Area out of some kind of spite. They just refused to be constrained by it.
That's the key distinction. It's not anti-SF. It's post-geography.
But, and this is probably the biggest but of the entire deep dive so far, you can't just send everyone home with a laptop and a Zoom account and expect magic to happen.
No, that is the quickest way to kill a company's productivity and culture. It's a recipe for disaster.
If you try to run a distributed team the same way you run a physical office, just, over a video call, it will be a miserable failure. You need a new operating system. You need infrastructure.
And that brings us to the really practical how-to section. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Part 4. Remote work as infrastructure. The source makes a statement here that I want us to really unpack. It says, remote work is not a perk. It is infrastructure.
This is the fundamental mindset shift that separates the winners from the losers in the remote world. Most companies, even today, treat remote work as an accommodation. Oh, Susan wants to work from home on Fridays. Okay, I guess we'll allow it.
That's a remote-friendly attitude.
It's remote-friendly, but it is not remote-native. A remote-native company understands that remote work isn't the absence of an office. It is the presence of systems.
Say more about that, the presence of systems.
It means you acknowledge that you don't have a physical building. So you have to intentionally build the digital architecture that replaces the functions of that building. You have to design it just as carefully as an architect would design a physical headquarters.
So let's look at the pillars of this new infrastructure. Pillar 1 is design your workspace and rhythm. And the source gets surprisingly physical here. It talks about the body as infrastructure.
I love this concept because it's so often overlooked. Think about a server farm. You keep it at the right temperature, you organize the cables neatly, you ensure a steady power supply. As a remote worker, you are the server. Your body and your mind are the core infrastructure of the business.
I feel personally attacked. I am currently slumped in a chair that I think I bought at a garage sale 10 years ago.
And that is a business risk factor. If your back goes out because of a bad chair, the server is down. The source argues you need to invest aggressively in your physical setup. It's not a luxury or a vanity. It's about maintaining uptime.
So what's the specific advice? Where do you start?
Ergonomics first. A good chair, a desk at the right height, an external monitor so you're not hunched over a laptop, but also things like lighting. The source mentions this lizard brain effect.
But what?
If you're working in a dark corner, or if you have a bright window behind you creating glare on your screen, your brain has to work harder just to process visual information. It's a low-level, constant strain. By 2 p.m., you're exhausted, and you have no idea why.
So, simple fix. Face the window.
Face the window. Get as much natural light as possible. It signals to your biological clock that it's daytime. It's time to be alert.
Speaking of biology, let's talk about rhythm. The source has a great line. Freedom requires discipline.
That is the central paradox of remote work. When you have no boss walking past your desk, you can do anything, which often means you end up doing nothing. Or you do everything all at once 24/7 and you burn out in 6 months.
So you need to create your own structure. You need to anchor your day.
Rituals. You need rituals. A specific start work ritual. Maybe it's making a specific type of coffee. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk around the block. And just as importantly, a specific end work ritual.
Like what?
Closing the laptop with intention. Tidying your desk. Saying goodbye to your work computer. You need to create a clear psychological boundary that signals to your brain that the shift is over.
And then there's the idea of working with your energy peaks. This was a big takeaway for me.
Most office cultures operate on an old factory model. 9 to 5, everyone is expected to be productive at the same pace. It's absurd. But remotely, you can hack your own biology.
How so?
If you are a morning person, if your brain is sharpest at 7 a.m., that is when you should be doing your deep work, your coding, your writing, your strategic thinking. Don't waste that peak energy on clearing out your email inbox.
And if you have that classic 3 p.m. slump,
that's when you do the mindless stuff. That's when you do your admin, your expense reports, or you get up and throw a load of laundry in. You optimize your tasks for your energy levels, not for the clock on the wall.
Optimize for output, not for hours logged.
That's the mantra.
Okay, let's move to pillar 2, productivity and focus engineering. I love that term, focus engineering. The quote here is, no walls means you must build your own.
In an office, the physical walls block out a lot of the world's distractions. At home, the dog is barking, the laundry pile is staring at you, and the entire internet, the infinity pool of content, is just one click away.
It's an endless source of distraction. So how do we build these digital walls?
You need to adopt frameworks. The source suggests the Pomodoro technique as a starting point.
That's the timer thing, right? Like 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Yes, but here's why it works so well for remote workers specifically. It creates a micro deadline. The hardest part of remote work is often just starting a big, intimidating task. Pomodoro lowers the barrier to entry. I don't have to write this whole report. I just have to focus for 25 minutes. Anyone can do that. It breaks the inertia.
That makes sense. The source also mentions the Eisenhower matrix.
Urgent versus important. This is critical for remote work. When you're alone, every Slack notification feels urgent. Every email feels urgent. The matrix forces you to take a breath and categorize, is this actually important or is it just loud?
Right.
Is it helping me achieve my goals or is it just someone else's priority invading my screen?
And to fight the noise, the source recommends getting aggressive. It recommends blockers.
You need an aggressive defense. Turn off all non-essential notifications on your phone and your computer. And yes, use apps like Freedom or Cold Turkey to literally block Twitter, Instagram, and news sites during your designated work hours. You have to save yourself from your own lack of willpower.
And what about the daily top 3?
This is a simple but incredibly effective rule to avoid what the source calls false busyness. At the start of your day, before you look at email or Slack, you write down the 3 most important things that must happen today for you to feel successful.
The things that actually move the needle.
Right. If you get those 3 things done, you had a productive day, even if your inbox is still full. If you answer 500 emails but you don't touch those 3 items, you failed.
Okay, that brings us to pillar 3, which covers the dark side of all this. Mental health and balance. The source has a really haunting line here. It says, burnout sneaks in because work seeps into life, like water finding cracks in a foundation.
It's so insidious. When your office is your living room, you are technically at work every time you walk past the couch with your laptop on it. You never fully decompress. The low-level stress is always there.
So how do we seal those cracks?
Digital hygiene. It's like brushing your teeth. It's something you have to do every day. When the day is done, you close the tabs. You quit the apps. You shut down the laptop. If you have to, you put it in a drawer or another room.
Create physical separation.
Create physical and digital separation. And use the tools. Slack has a pause notifications feature. Use it ruthlessly after hours. It is not a sign of laziness. It is a sign of professional boundary maintenance.
We also have to talk about the isolation factor.
It's a huge one. We are social primates. We are not designed to sit alone in a room for 12 hours a day staring at a glowing rectangle. You have to be incredibly deliberate about scheduling social interaction.
So what does that look like in practice?
Join online communities related to your work or hobbies. Go to a co-working space once a week just to be around other humans. And schedule coffee chats with your colleagues that have absolutely no work agenda. The only goal is to connect as people.
And for global teams, there is the very specific issue of time zone fairness.
This is a huge leadership responsibility. If you're the boss in New York and you always schedule the big weekly meeting at 4 p.m. your time, you are forcing your team in Europe to work late every single week. That breeds resentment faster than anything else.
So the simple rule is rotate the pain.
Rotate the pain. 1 week, the meeting time is convenient for New York. The next week, it's convenient for London. The next for Tokyo. And you have to respect sleep. The source calls sleep sacred infrastructure. If you are sending notifications that wake your team up, you are actively damaging your own company's infrastructure.
Okay, so we've built the physical and mental infrastructure. Now we need the software that runs on top of it. The operating system. Part 5. Async communication.
This is the buzzword of the decade, isn't it?
Oh.
Async. But I think most people get it wrong.
Let's start with a clear definition. What is it?
Simply put, it's communication that does not require the other person to be there at the same time you are. An email is async, a scheduled meeting is sync, a Slack message can be either, which is where the problems start.
But the big critique I always hear is, isn't async just slow? Isn't it less efficient?
It can be slow if you do it badly, but the core value proposition of async is clarity over immediacy. In a synchronous culture, we value speed. I need an answer N now W. In an async culture, we value thoughtfulness. I need the right answer when you have had time to properly think about it.
But if it's done poorly, it just feels like you're being ignored. The source says it creates silent disengagement.
That is the danger zone. That is async hell. If I send you an important message and you don't reply for 2 days, and I have no context as to why, My brain starts to fill in the gaps. I assume you hate me, or you've quit, or my project is being canceled.
It creates anxiety. So how do we fix that? The source outlines what it calls the golden rules of async. Rule number 1, document everything.
This comes straight from the playbook of GitLab, which is sort of the holy grail of remote companies. Their internal rule is, if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist.
What does that mean in practice?
In a physical office, you have oral tradition. Oh, if you want to know how to deploy the server, just go ask Bob. He knows.
In a remote team, Bob might be asleep, or Bob might be on vacation, or Bob might quit. That knowledge can't live in Bob's head. It has to live in a central, written location, a handbook.
The single source of truth.
Exactly. Whether it's in Notion or Confluence or GitHub, the tool doesn't matter as much as the discipline of writing things down.
Okay, golden rule number 2. Silence is ambiguity. We just touched on this. The cure for that ambiguity is intentional overcommunication, and specifically using SLA service level agreements with your own team.
So like a formal contract with your colleagues.
It sounds formal, but it's really just a simple social contract. We as a team agree that all non-urgent emails will get a response within 24 hours. It doesn't mean you have to solve the problem in 24 hours, but you have to acknowledge receipt. A simple, got it, I'll look into this tomorrow morning, removes all the anxiety from the system.
It closes the loop.
It closes the loop.
And rule number 3, default to action.
This means you don't wait for permission to start working on something. You start, and you make your work visible. You use status signals in Slack, offline until 2 p.m. In deep work mode, we'll check messages at noon. Traveling, back online tomorrow. You remove the guessing game for everyone else.
I want to spend a moment on a specific tool that the source highlights because it feels like it bridges the gap perfectly between slow text and inefficient meetings. That tool is Loom.
Loom is a time machine. I genuinely believe that. It's one of the most important async tools out there.
Explain that. How is a video recording a time machine?
Okay, let's use a real-world example. You're a product manager, and you find a complex bug in the software. In the old synchronous world, what do? You have to call a meeting.
Right. You had to find a time on the calendar when you, the engineer, and maybe a designer are all free and awake.
Which could be tomorrow. Then you all get on a call, you spend 5 minutes on small talk, and then you spend 20 minutes trying to explain the bug, sharing your screen.
And half the people in that meeting probably didn't need to be there in the first place.
Exactly. With Loom, you just hit record on your screen. You talk through the bug as you reproduce it. Hey, look at this. When I click on this button, the whole page breaks. Here's what I was expecting to happen. The whole recording takes you 3 minutes. You send the link. Then you go to sleep. While you are sleeping, your engineer in Lagos gets the notification. He watches your video. He can watch it at 2 times speed because he processes information fast. He sees the bug instantly. He fixes it. He then records a 1-minute Loom video reply showing you the fix. When you wake up in the morning, the work is done.
Wow.
You have successfully decoupled the transfer of complex information from the constraints of time and the calendar.
The source calls it presence without pressure.
That's a perfect description. You get all the nuance of voice and video, the tone, the ability to point at things without the soul-crushing nightmare of calendar Tetris.
That feels like a superpower. Okay, so we have the system. We have the operating system. Now we need the people. Part 6, building the borderless team, the whole hiring process.
The source uses a really great fishing metaphor here. It says that hiring globally is like learning to fish in many different oceans at once.
It sounds incredibly overwhelming. Where do you even start? Step 1, according to the source, is strategy and readiness.
Right. Before you even write a job description, you have to identify which roles on your team are truly remote native. Engineering, design, writing, marketing, these are generally easy fits. Sales can be harder, depending on the product and region. But the biggest part of the strategy is assessing your own internal readiness.
You mean that digital backbone we were talking about?
Exactly. Do you have the handbook? Do you have the async communication habits ingrained in your culture? If you bring a brilliant new hire into a chaotic, unwritten, synchronous by default mess, they will fail. And it will be your fault, not theirs. You have to be ready to host them properly.
Okay, so you're ready. Step 2, sourcing. You can't just post on LinkedIn and hope for the best, can you?
You can, but you'll be missing out on the best talent. You need to go where the remote talent already lives. That means niche job boards like remote.co, well-found, even Upwork for high-end freelancers. But more importantly, you need to go into the communities.
Like where?
Go into the Python and JavaScript servers on Discord. Go into the subreddits for your specific industry. Participate in the conversations on GitHub. You're not just posting a job, you're becoming part of the ecosystem where the best people hang out.
The source also mentions a very clever tactic, targeting the almost remote candidate.
This is a goldmine strategy.
Hmm.
Look for talented people who are currently in hybrid roles. Maybe they're forced to go into an office 3 days a week and they absolutely hate it. They are desperate for full flexibility and autonomy. If you offer them a truly remote native role, you will get their instant loyalty and gratitude.
Okay, so you found some candidates. Step 3, selection. How do we interview these people effectively when we can't meet them in person? The source is very, very clear on this. Portfolios over passion.
In a Zoom interview, charisma can be incredibly misleading. Passion is easy to fake. Oh, I just love your mission. Anyone can say that. The only question that matters is, can they actually do the work to a high standard?
So this is where the take-home assignment comes in.
It is the ultimate filter. But, and this is a very important but, it shouldn't be a stupid brain teaser. Don't ask them how many golf balls fit in a Boeing 747. That just tests for trivia and makes you look arrogant.
So what should the assignment be?
Give them a small, self-contained slice of real work. Here is a broken piece of our code. Please fix it and explain your thought process. Or, here is a real marketing scenario we faced last month. Write a one-page strategy document on how you would have handled it.
And you're testing for 2 things there.
You're testing for their raw skill, obviously. But just as importantly, you are testing for their written communication. As we've established, in an async world, clear writing is not a soft skill. It's the core competency of the job. If they can't explain their thinking clearly in writing, they cannot succeed on a remote team.
And the source warns about one massive red flag to look for during this whole process.
Responsiveness. It's a non-negotiable. In a remote setting, responsiveness is performance. If a candidate takes 3 days to reply to your email during the interview process, when they're supposed to be on their absolute best behavior, you should run away. Fast. It will not get better once you hire them.
Now for step 4, the part that terrifies every founder and small business owner, the legal maze. Okay, I want to hire that amazing engineer in Nigeria, but I have no idea how to navigate Nigerian labor law. I don't know how to pay taxes in Lagos.
This used to be the blocker. For decades, this was the reason why only giant corporations could hire globally. But the market has evolved to solve this problem.
And the solution is the EOR, the employer of record.
Deal, Oyster, GP, Remote.com. These companies are the picks and shovels of the age of abundance. They are the reason this is now accessible to a 2-person startup.
So how do they actually work? Is it some kind of legal loophole?
No, it's a service layer. It's actually quite simple from your perspective. Essentially, a company like Deal has already set up a legal entity in Nigeria. They technically hire your chosen engineer on your behalf. They handle the locally compliant contract, the local taxes, the pension contributions, the health benefits, all of it.
And what do I do?
You just sign a single service contract with Deal and pay them a monthly invoice. You are, in effect, leasing that employee back from them. You direct all of their day-to-day work, but the entire legal and compliance headache is completely outsourced to the EOR.
So it turns a global compliance nightmare into a simple SaaS subscription.
That's exactly what it is. It removes all the friction. It allows you to hire the best person for the job in 50 different countries without ever leaving your desk or talking to a lawyer.
Amazing. Okay, final step in the process, step 5. Onboarding and retention. You've hired them, you're paying them. How do you make them feel part of the team and keep them for the long term?
Intentionality. That's the key word. You can't just ship them a laptop and an HR form and say, good luck, see you on Slack. You need a structured, high-touch, virtual onboarding process.
What does that look like?
A buddy system is crucial. Pair every new hire with a veteran on the team for their first 2 weeks. And this person should not be their direct manager. It's someone they can ask all the stupid questions to, like, how do I submit an expense report? Or what's the deal with this inside joke on Slack?
And then there's culture.
Culture isn't the ping pong table or the free snacks anymore. Culture is how you make decisions. Culture is who gets promoted. Culture is how you communicate. And you have to be so deliberate about inclusion. If you have a hybrid meeting and all the people in the physical conference room are laughing at a joke that the person on the Zoom screen didn't hear, you are actively destroying your company culture. You have to level the playing field for everyone, regardless of location.
So, bringing this entire massive discussion to a close. Part 7. SF's legacy and the future. We started this deep dive by saying the old story of San Francisco is dead. But does that mean the city itself is now irrelevant?
No. And the source, Calhoun's essay, is very careful to make this point. San Francisco isn't over. It has just changed its role in the ecosystem. It used to be the destination. Now it is a node,
A distribution node.
a very, very powerful one. It still excels at deep tech. If you're building a nuclear fusion reactor or a new kind of AI hardware, you probably still need that physical density of researchers and specialized labs. And let's be honest, the majority of top-tier VC money is still concentrated there, even if they are now comfortable wiring those funds globally.
But the big shift, the legacy, is that its greatest export wasn't the companies themselves, it was the culture.
That's the beautiful irony of the whole story. Silicon Valley was so successful that its core mindset, that netizen spirit of relentless experimentation, comfort with risk, fast iteration, it escaped the valley. It went viral.
So the founder mindset is now a global phenomenon.
Exactly. You can find that same spirit in a co-working space in Ho Chi Minh City, or a garage in Estonia, or a university lab in São Paulo.
And the future, then, isn't about centralization at all. The source uses this word, anti-fragility.
A well-run distributed team is inherently anti-fragile. Think about it. If a hurricane hits Miami, a centralized company based in Miami shuts down completely. But a distributed team, the Miami node goes offline for a few days, but the London node, the Austin node, and the Lagos node just keep working. The network as a whole survives the shock. It's more resilient.
And the final vision here is just incredibly empowering for anyone listening who has an idea. The source says, founders don't chase a place anymore, they build the place around their idea.
That is the single most important takeaway. The next unicorn won't be born from a zip code. It will be born from an idea that is bold enough to ignore one.
So let's just quickly recap the incredible journey we've just taken. We started with the old SF, the fog, the scarcity, the geographic gatekeepers. We moved to the global mindset, the idea of abundance, of talent being available to anyone, anywhere.
We unpacked the modern startup stack, the tools like Slack, Notion, and Figma that unbundled the city. We look at the critical infrastructure you need to build at home, your workspace, your routine, your focus engineering.
We broke down the operating system of async communication with its golden rules of documentation and over-communication.
And we gave you the tactical steps to actually build that borderless team, from the phishing strategy for sourcing talent to the EOR solution for legal compliance.
It really is a complete playbook for the modern founder, for the netizen.
It is.
The call to action then is really simple. Start anywhere. Start in your garage. Start in your childhood bedroom. Start in a coffee shop in Bali.
Just start and solve real problems.
Let's build the future one distributed team at a time.
I love that. A great way to frame it.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final, slightly provocative thought from the source material. It brings us full circle right back to that age of abundance prophecy we started with.
Go for it.
If geography is no longer a constraint, and if talent is truly everywhere, and if the tools of creation are democratized and accessible to everyone, what is the only remaining limit on what you can build?
The implication is clear, isn't it? And it's a real challenge to all of us. The only limit left is you. It's your own ability to organize, your ability to communicate, your ability to lead. The external friction is gone. The excuses are gone. It's just you and your ambition.
That is both terrifying and incredibly exciting.
It should be.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Now go build something.